Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, please leave a like, comment down below and subscribe, and yeah, let's get on with the video. So today's video is going to be going through all the books I read in 2022. So my original goal was to read 15, then I ended up reading 25 books, and I'm going to be going through all the books I read this year and showing you my ratings. As you may notice, I am in my old room and I apologise that the background doesn't look amazing. My room is now being used for a storage room, so that's fine. I've got a coffee here. I've already had one coffee today, so if I seem a bit like, that is why. So let's get on with the video. So the first book that I read this year was The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes / The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle, and this was in the cloth-bound classic edition. I finished reading this on the 27th of February 2022 and I rated it 5 stars. I really loved the Sherlock series from BBC, and it was really fun to actually start reading the book. Also, it's been interesting just to read like the stories that you've not really heard about, like especially if you have just watched the series. Yes, so I rated that 5 stars. Now you might have to excuse my pronunciation of this because this is like a French title, but the next book that I read this year was Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, and Norman Denny, who was the translator for the book, and again this was the cloth-bound classics edition. I finished this book on the 28th of April, and you would have noticed that it took me 2 months to complete this book, and that is because that book is a thick book. And I rated this one 4 stars just because there was this one chapter which is, I think it's literally all it is just about the Battle of Waterloo, and obviously it is an important part of the chapter, at least the end part, the important part of the book, especially at the, well, more so at the end for me, but I really didn't enjoy that chapter because it was just talking about the war. Yeah, rated that 4 stars. Then all these books I kind of finished in very quick succession. So I had Heartstopper Volume 1, which I finished on the 30th of April, rated 5 stars. Then I had Volume 2 of Heartstopper, also finished it on the 30th, also rated it 5 stars. Volume 3, which I also finished on the 30th of April and rated it 5 stars. Rated all those 5 stars. I really loved the Heartstopper books. It's so nice to see like kind of good representation, and yeah. So then I bought the 4th book, the 4th volume of Heartstopper, and I finished this on the 1st of May, also rated it 5 stars. I then finished Nick and Charlie, which is so like this little novella from that universe, and I finished this on the 10th of May and I rated it 5 stars. So this was the book that I was actually reading after Les Mis, but this one was another big book, and it was Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow, and I finished this on the 20th of May and I rated this 5 stars. This book was also very long, which is why I'm glad I kind of read the Heartstopper book, because they kind of kept me interested in the Hamilton book, even though it was quite interesting to read, and Hamilton is one of my favourite musicals, and it was Lin-Manuel Miranda was inspired to write the musical based on this book. Then the next book I read was Anne of Green Gables, which is the first book in the Anne of Green Gables series by L.M. Montgomery, and I finished this on the 23rd of May and rated it 5 stars. I finished this book on the way back from my MCL concert, and I was on the coach and I cried on the coach. After that I read On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Wong, and I finished this on the 26th of May and I rated it 5 stars. I love this book. I will admit I first bought it purely just because the title and the book cover was so pretty, but it was a really good story, and yeah, I really liked it. So then the next book I read was Anne of Avonlea, which is the 2nd book in the Anne of Green Gables series, and I finished this on the 3rd of July and I rated it 4 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first book, but I still thought it was a relatively good one. And yeah, the next book I read was Galatea by Madeline Miller, and this is like this tiny little book which was like £10 or something, and it was literally like 50 pages, and I don't get why it was so expensive, but I still rated it 5 stars because it was a very interesting story. I finished this on the 3rd of July. The next book I read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I finished this on the 15th of July and I rated it 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, but one part why I didn't rate it 5 stars was it didn't quite, I didn't cry, and I was expecting to cry. And I don't know whether that's the reason I didn't cry, because I was like expecting myself to cry and I just didn't because of it. But like it was really good. I did really enjoy it, but I don't think it was quite like life altering and 5-star worthy. So the next book I read was Anne of the Island, which is the 3rd book in Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery, and I finished this book on the 31st of July and I rated it 4 stars because again wasn't as good as the first one, but was still pretty good. So then the next book I finished this year was Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and I finished this on the 4th of August 2022 and I rated it 5 stars. I have been really wanting to get into that series for a while. I've got the second book, I've just not read it yet, but I'm really interested in getting into the series. This next book I finished in 2 days because I couldn't put it down, and that is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. I finished this on the 6th of August and rated it 5 stars. I cried at the ending of this, and I also nearly threw the book I nearly threw the book across the room because the ending was like good but also very like, why do you do this to me? So I just kind of nearly threw it across the room in frustration. But yeah, so that's They Both Die at the End. So then the next book I read was Heatwave by Victor Justin, and I finished this on the 11th of August and I rated it 5 stars. I technically didn't, I got this book for free because I had enough points on my Waterstones card, and basically me and Luca were going to the beach and I wanted a book to read because I'd forgotten to bring a book with me. And I picked up this book. I was like, this sounds interesting from the blurb. Went up to the till, didn't have to pay for it because, as I said, I had enough points, and I read it in 1 day because it's quite a short book. And the ending, I literally was like, what the... When I finished the book, I was like, what the hell? What on earth? I recommend reading it. I'm pretty sure it's a translated book, and I think it was originally in French. If it wasn't, I apologise, but I'm fairly sure it was originally written in French. And it's a really interesting short story, and I definitely recommend reading it on a beach. However, keep an eye out if there are children around because the ending might make you want to swear very loudly. Then the next book I finished was Never Let Me Go by Ishiguru, and I finished this on the 16th of August. I'm pretty sure at this point I had like 2 books on the go. I think that's why I finished them at the same time. I rated this one 5 stars and it was really, really good. Very interesting concept, and yeah, I really enjoyed reading it, hence the 5 stars. Then the next book I read was Anne's House of Dreams, which is the 5th book. I was reading a lot of Anne of Green Gables this year, as you can tell, and I finished this on the 20th of September and I rated it 4 stars. None of the books after the first one have been, in my opinion, as good as that. And the next book I finished was Norwegian Wood by Murakami, and I finished this on the 10th of October and I rated it 5 stars. This book, the amount of lines I underlined, this is a really beautiful book and I definitely recommend reading it. Then the next book I finished reading was My Policeman by Bethan Roberts, and I rated this 5 stars. I've been wanting to read this for a while. Book broke my heart a little, but yeah, it was a really good book, rated it 5 stars, and I definitely recommend reading it. Now the next book that I finished reading was Heartbreak Boys by Simon James Green. I rated this 4 stars and it was pretty good. It wasn't kind of groundbreaking in my opinion, but it was still very good, and I definitely recommend if you want kind of like a quite light-hearted read. There is a little bit of angst in there from what I remember, but for the most part it's pretty light-hearted and nice. Then the next book I finished was the Heartstopper Yearbook, and I finished this on the 9th of December and rated this 5 stars. I just really liked the book. Yeah, it's obviously very short. It is kind of like a annual kind of thing, if that makes sense. So it is still good, and it gives you some extra info on different characters from the Heartstopper universe. And yeah, and then this is the second to last book that I finished, and it is Black Tudors by Miranda Kaufman. I think that's how you pronounce the name. If that isn't, I'm really sorry. I actually have the book here. I saw this book in my uni library and I thought, that looks really interesting, I'm gonna read it. And I did, and I finished it, and it was that was really interesting. I finished this like just after I got back. I came home. It is a really good book. If you can find it, definitely read it because it is very interesting. And then the final book that I read this year was A Christmas Carol and Other Christmas Writings by Charles Dickens. I was reading this around Christmas time, and it was really fun to read A Christmas Carol again because I've not read it since I was in high school. I finished this on the 30th of December, so as I'm filming this, I literally finished it like 2 days ago, but I was determined to finish it before. I wanted to finish it before Christmas, or like on Christmas, but that didn't happen. But I finished it after Christmas, and I rated it 4 stars. I would have just preferred to just have A Christmas Carol, but some of the other stories in here were quite interesting too, but I mainly would have just loved to have just A Christmas Carol. So that is all the books I read this year. That was 25 books, and I'm really proud of myself for doing that because I kind of went through a slump last year with the amount of books I read. As you would have seen from last year's video, I only read 13, but this year last year I managed to read 25. I have set my goal again to be 15, just to be somewhat realistic. If I manage to read more, that is great. If you want to know what I'm currently reading, it will be in the description of the video. I always put what I'm currently reading in the description of my videos, but what I'm currently reading is One Last Stop by McQuiston. I'm on the first chapter of this, or I've just read the first chapter of it, and I'm enjoying it so far. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next week with another video. Bye!